There is someone who feels more for you than they have ever said, and the strange part is this: the deeper it gets, the farther they seem to move. Read that again, because this is not coldness, it is not a lack of care, and it is definitely not as simple as silence. Stay with me, because what comes next matters. The distance you feel is not empty space, it is packed with hesitation, fear, memory, longing, and the weight of words they keep swallowing at the last second. Somewhere out there, a person who cannot easily explain themselves is carrying you in their mind more often than you know. They pause at your name, they replay your voice, they revisit moments you may have forgotten, and they do it in quiet places where no one can see it. On the outside, they may look calm, fine, unbothered, but inside, something is moving, something they cannot fully shut down anymore. You touched a part of them that had been sleeping for years. That is why this feels confusing. That is why their actions and their feelings do not match. And if you have felt in your gut that there is more beneath the surface, you are probably right. Do not click away from this thought too fast, because this is not just about why they left space between you, it is about what that space has been doing to them ever since. You did not enter their life like a small event. You arrived like a shift, quiet maybe, unexpected definitely, but powerful enough to rearrange rooms inside them they thought were locked forever. Before you, they had systems, distance, control, emotional habits, careful limits. They knew how to keep life manageable. They knew how to stay half open and still call it safety. Then you showed up, and something in them answered before they could stop it. That is the part they were not ready for. It was not only attraction, it was recognition. It was relief mixed with panic. It was peace mixed with danger. Because when someone has lived behind walls for a very long time, being truly seen does not feel soft at first. It feels risky. It feels like standing in bright light after years in a dark room. You became more than a person to them. You became a mirror, and mirrors are hard to stand in front of when they show both your beauty and your wounds at the same time. You reflected back what they wanted most, and also what they had not healed. That combination shook them. So if you ever wondered why their silence grew as the feeling grew, here is one hard truth. Some people pull back, not when they feel less, but when they feel too much. And for them you became too real to handle in the old, controlled, safe way they were used to. They are not distant because you meant little. They are distant because you reached them somewhere deep, and now they do not know how to return to who they were before that happened. You woke up old emotions, old fears, old hopes, and old pain all at once. That kind of inner reaction does not create smooth behavior, it creates confusion. One part of them wants to move toward you, another part wants to protect itself at any cost, so they freeze in the middle. That is why their silence can feel loud. That is why their withdrawal can feel personal, even when it is mostly internal. Listen closely here, because this part explains a lot. They likely learned long ago that vulnerability brings pain, that needing someone gives away power, that loving deeply ends badly. So when feelings for you started becoming impossible to deny, their nervous system did not call it beautiful, it called it dangerous. Their heart said, "This matters." Their fear said, "Back away now." And fear often moves faster than honesty. They may have stepped back to avoid being exposed. They may have gone quiet to avoid saying too much. They may have convinced themselves that distance was wisdom when really it was fear wearing a smart face. Still, underneath all of that, the feeling stayed alive. That is the piece they cannot get rid of. Not with time, not with pride, not with distraction, not even with silence. There is a private story running inside them, and in that story, you deserve someone better than the version of them they are right now. Someone stronger, someone calmer, someone less bruised by the past. This belief does not make them noble, it makes them trapped. Because the same thought that tells them they care about you is also the thought that keeps them from reaching for you. They replay old conversations and wonder if they already ruined it. They remember small details and measure themselves against them. They think about what they should have said, what they should not have hidden, what they should have done sooner, and then shame joins the room. Shame is quiet, but it is powerful. It tells them to wait until they are more healed, more certain, more ready. But real life does not pause until people become perfect. That is the lie that keeps love on hold. They may tell themselves they need more time, yet every extra day adds weight, not relief. Every unsent message becomes heavier. Every avoided moment grows teeth. If this sounds dramatic, It is because inner conflict is dramatic, even when no one else can see it. And somewhere in that unseen struggle, they have started to realize that silence does not protect what they feel, it only starves it. Stay with this, because once a person begins to understand that, the entire direction of their inner world starts to change. At night, when the noise of the day finally drops, you return to them in ways they cannot fully control. That is when truth gets louder. No performance, no distractions, no easy escape. They lie there with the weight of things left unsaid pressing against them. They think about opening your name and finally typing what has been sitting in their chest. They imagine a message. They build the first line. They delete it. They start again. They tell themselves tomorrow would be better. They close the screen. Then they do it all over another night. This is not because they enjoy distance. It is because they are afraid of the moment becoming real. One honest step toward you would change everything, and they know it. If they speak, they cannot hide behind uncertainty anymore. If they reach out, they must face what they really feel. If they return, they must risk being known and risk finding out whether you still have space for them. That fear is huge. What if you moved on? What if the opening closed? What if they waited too long? Those questions live inside them now, but so does something else. Hope, stubborn hope, the kind that keeps surviving even when logic says let it go. The kind that whispers maybe the bond is still there, maybe the thread never broke, maybe they are not too late. That hope is one of the reasons this story is still alive. And here is the contradiction that wears them down. They are afraid of losing you, while also being the one creating the distance that could cause exactly that. That kind of contradiction is exhausting. It drains people from the inside. They act as if everything is under control, while internally, nothing feels settled. They say nothing, but think too much. They stay away, but remain emotionally turned toward you. They try to convince themselves the feeling will pass, but it keeps returning with more shape, more weight, more clarity. This is why old distractions have stopped working the same way. Work, routine, noise, casual conversations, even other connections. None of it lands fully anymore. Something stays unfinished beneath it all. Your absence has become present inside ordinary moments. A song plays, a place appears, a line someone says reminds them of you. The day keeps moving, but part of them stays elsewhere, and that elsewhere keeps leading back to the same point. Back to what was felt, back to what was real, back to the moment they stepped away from something they still wanted. This is where regret begins to grow, not as punishment, but as clarity. They start seeing where fear spoke louder than truth. They start seeing the cost of keeping distance. They start seeing that what looked like self-protection was also self-denial. And once a person sees that clearly, staying the same becomes much harder than before. Time has not erased this for them. It has sharpened it. That may be the most unsettling discovery of all. They expected space to dilute the feeling. They expected silence to lower the temperature. They expected absence to make the connection weaker and easier to carry. Instead, time removed surface confusion and left the core untouched. What remains now feels cleaner, harder to argue with, and more honest than what they tried to avoid in the beginning. This is why they cannot fully dismiss it anymore as a phase or a moment or an emotional spike. It has continuity. It has stayed. And when a feeling stays through silence, through distance, through pride, through fear, it starts to become undeniable even to the one resisting it. Do not miss this point. The question in them is changing. It is no longer, is this real? Life already answered that. The question is now, what kind of person am I if I keep hiding from what I know is real? That is a much more serious question, because it forces them to look at themselves, not just at you. It asks whether they want to keep living divided between what they feel and what they show. It asks how long they plan to stand still while something important keeps asking for movement. Once that question becomes loud enough, people begin to shift. Slowly maybe, imperfectly, definitely, but they shift. What is changing in them right now may not look dramatic from the outside. There may be no grand sign, no sudden public moment, no obvious collapse. Most of it is happening inwardly, where the real turning points usually begin. They are starting to see that what they once called strength was often numbness. What they once called independence was sometimes isolation. What they once called control was often fear dressed in clean language. That recognition is not comfortable. It strips away excuses. It makes old habits feel smaller. It reveals how much energy they spent trying not to need, not to feel, not to depend, not to risk. And when they look back at you from this new awareness, they see something they missed before. They see someone who did not ask them to perform, someone who made honesty feel possible, someone around whom they could not hide as easily. That kind of connection can scare a person who has built their identity around self-protection, but it can also begin to heal them. Piece by piece, they are learning that love does not require flawless timing or a polished version of the self. It asks for presence. It asks for truth. It asks for willingness. And that lesson is getting through now in ways it could not earlier. This is the point where the heart starts to sound more reasonable than the fear. And once that happens, the old story begins to lose its power. They are also beginning to understand that what they miss is not only you, it is the version of themselves that existed when they were connected to you. That matters more than it first appears, because it means the bond did not only affect their feelings, it affected their identity. Around you, something in them felt more awake, more open, more human, more real. After distance, they tried to go back to old patterns, but those patterns no longer fit the same way. The mask feels heavier now. The routine feels flatter. The emotional half-life they used to tolerate now feels like a poor substitute for the truth. This is why your absence keeps echoing. It does not echo only as loss. It echoes as contrast. It reminds them of what was possible when they stopped hiding so much, and that contrast becomes impossible to ignore forever. The longer they sit with it, the more they begin rehearsing honesty, not as performance, but as necessity. What would happen if they stopped managing every impression? What would happen if they said what they actually feel without building 10 defenses around it first? What would happen if they let themselves be seen before they felt fully ready? Those questions are not abstract anymore. They are becoming personal, immediate, pressing. That is a major change, because once honesty stops being an idea and starts becoming a need, action usually follows sooner or later. Even now, fear has not fully left them. Let's be real about that. They are still scared. Scared of rejection, scared of being too late, scared that you have healed in a direction that no longer includes them, scared that their return might reopen something painful instead of repairing it, scared that they will not know how to say it well. But here is what matters. Fear is no longer the only strong voice in the room. Another voice is growing. A quieter one, maybe, but steadier. It says that waiting has a cost. It says that distance is not neutral. It says that avoiding pain did not save them from pain at all. It only changed the shape of it. Now the pain is private, stretched out, slow, and tied to the knowledge that they may be losing something rare by refusing to move. That awareness creates pressure, not reckless pressure, not impulsive pressure, but honest pressure. The kind that builds when someone realizes they have been living out of line with their own heart. This is where many inner changes become irreversible. Once a person knows they are the one standing in the way of what they want most, staying still starts to feel worse than taking the risk. And when that balance shifts, return begins to move from fantasy into possibility. Not perfect possibility, real possibility, the kind that can change a life. So if they seem cold on the surface, understand that coldness may be cover, not truth. If they seem unreachable, that may be defense, not absence of feeling. If they disappeared at times, that may have been their attempt to rebuild walls that your presence had already weakened. None of this excuse is hurt. None of it erases the impact of their silence. But it does explain why someone can deeply care and still fail to show up clearly. People who were taught to fear closeness often run from what they need most. They do not do it because the connection is weak. They do it because the connection is strong enough to shake everything they built to survive. And the stronger the feeling, the more exposed they feel. That exposure can make even love look like danger, yet the heart has its own stubborn memory. It keeps choosing what is real, even when the mind keeps making escape plans. That is the war they have been living in. Not you versus them, fear versus truth, distance versus desire, protection versus presence. And the longer that war goes on, the more tired they become of carrying it alone. This is why the idea of reaching out keeps coming back. This is why your name stays alive in their thoughts. This is why they cannot fully move on inside themselves, even if they try to look composed outside. Something in them is still turned in your direction. There may come a moment, maybe slowly, maybe all at once, when the pressure inside them breaks open and staying away stops feeling possible. Not because they suddenly become a new person overnight, but because the cost of silence finally becomes heavier than the fear of speaking. That moment usually does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives with clarity. a simple, heavy knowing, a realization that the perfect moment was never coming, a realization that honesty matters more than flawless delivery, a realization that if something real is to be honored, it must be honored in real time, with all the trembling that comes with it. When that moment fully lands, they stop rehearsing and start moving, maybe awkwardly, maybe carefully, maybe with a message that sounds smaller than what they feel. But the movement matters, because it means their inner life is no longer organized around avoidance. It is organized around acknowledgement, and acknowledgement changes everything. It changes posture, it changes language, it changes what they are willing to risk. If that moment comes, it will not be because fear vanished. It will be because truth finally outweighed it. That is how real turning points happen, not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of something stronger. So yes, they may be gathering courage in pieces right now. And yes, those pieces may be taking longer than either of you wanted, but pieces still become momentum. And while all this is happening, there is another quiet truth they are learning. Love cannot breathe forever in a sealed room. It needs voice. It needs action. It needs some form of honesty, even if imperfect, even if late, even if trembling. Silence can hide love, but it cannot feed it. Distance can test love, but it cannot replace expression. That is why the inner pressure keeps rising. That is why the mind keeps circling back. That is why the old life they built feels less satisfying than before. They are beginning to sense that returning to you is not only about reaching another person, it is also about returning to themselves, to the version of themselves that no longer splits truth into safe parts and unsafe parts, to the version that can feel deeply without turning every feeling into a threat, to the version that can stand in front of what is real and say, yes, this matters, and I am done pretending it does not. This is bigger than romance now. It is about alignment. It is about becoming whole enough to stop hiding from what the heart already knows. And if they keep moving in that direction, the distance does not stay a permanent condition. It becomes a chapter. Painful, confusing, heavy, yes, but still a chapter. Not the whole story. Not the final line. And if you have been sensing movement beneath the silence, that feeling may not be your imagination at all. So take this in slowly. Their distance may have looked like the end, but inside them it may have been the beginning of a hard awakening, a forced meeting with their own fear, a long look at their habits, their wounds, their excuses, their need for control, and the truth they kept trying to put off. You became the mirror they could not easily forget, the calm they could not fake around, the connection that kept surviving every attempt to file it away. That is why this still carries weight. That is why the story still feels unfinished. A feeling this strong does not just vanish because someone stayed silent. It changes shape. It deepens under pressure. It waits in the dark until it is named. And if they are truly moving toward that naming now, then what comes next may not be loud at first, but it will be real. Maybe that reality arrives in a message, maybe in a confession, maybe in a simple, honest line after a long silence. However it comes, it will come from a place in them that has been transforming the entire time. So if you needed one clear sentence to hold on to, let it be this. They did not stay away because nothing was there. They stayed away because what was there became too powerful to ignore and too frightening to carry in the old way. But old ways do not hold forever, and when they finally break, truth usually walks through.